Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee Bowslaugh. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. So today with us, we have Susan Gold. Hello.
Hey, Randy, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you. Good morning.
I'm loving your background. It's very
So
calming.
that's actually out my back slider. That's like if I look out my back slider, that's what I see. And I would shoot into it, but there's too much backlight. And
Yeah.
then if I look out my side window, it looks like the Nepali coast of Kauai. And if I look out my front, it looks like Tuscany. And I've been led here
Wow.
intuitively. Montana was not even on my bucket list.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I was like, obviously that's a picture, but it's a picture just like out your house. That's
Mm.
that's pretty awesome. So tell us a little bit about who is Susan Gold?
Wow. Well, I'm a new author, first time writer. Didn't expect to write a book, but was told by an Irish seer in 2007 I had a book to write, and I just shoved that under the carpet really quickly.
Sure,
And
sure.
yeah, I really don't want to go through that agony for a PR tool. Thank you very much. And then I had two other intuitives back to back tell me that I had a book to write. The last one said, "You have three books to write." And I was like, okay, I'm going to put a plug in the jug before it's a whole library that I've got to get writing. And I'm grateful I did. It actually gave me a lot of perspective. It's obviously a memoir, it's my personal and professional direct trajectory. And I didn't think my story was that unique and who would want to hear my story. But actually, it's been kind of an interesting trudge here on the planet.
Okay, well that's all right. Okay, so that's like what you do, but who are you?
So I'm an empath. I'm highly intuitive. I'm sensitive. I feel energy clearly. I'm driven. I still have that type A, can't train it out of me. I spent a lot of time in New York and LA, and I thought maybe coming out here I'd soften, and I have. I'm a mom, a single mom, but my son is 19.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, worming, getting his way through college in 3 years instead of four, knock wood.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Um, and who else am I? I am a former athlete.
Oh, what did you play?
I actually was a marathoner and then triathlete
Oh
and
wow.
ultimately a nationally ranked adult masters swimmer.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Except ultimately, what I discovered, even though I had a lot of joy doing it, I was numbing a lot of pain. Yeah, numbing and using it like a tool to garner value and self-worth and self-esteem from maybe a not so big picture healthy
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah, I hear you on that one.
I'm sure you can relate. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good segue then to lead us in to mental health. So start your story wherever makes the most sense.
So I grew up in a challenging, chaotic home. My dad's a genius astrophysicist, but he also had a little issue with alcohol. The cork used to pop off the bottle at 7:30 a.m. and you'd hear glug, 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 glug. And he always smelled like whiskey and Old Spice and Scope. And he was fun and charming, but he also had a sexual addiction and was cheating since almost the honeymoon, and a
Wow.
complete Peter Pan and narcissist. And my mother was equally as brilliant and ingenious. And she was an amazing homemaker. She could give Martha Stewart a run for her money for sure. But she
Oh.
was also saddled with five children before the age of 30.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, her chance at education never came. Um, and she also came from horrific abuse herself. And I believe she may have had a mental illness combined with a food addiction, which she soothed with diet pills, which are speed. So it was a very unstable platform. And there was abuse of every sort in every cubbyhole and crevice. And we appeared well from the outside in, but from the inside out, I certainly was crumbling. I have three brothers and a sister, and we all have a very different take on
Yeah.
our upbringing.
And I think that's kind of an interesting point to talk about a little bit because I just have the one brother and then two sisters, but they grew up and lived with their mom. Um, my brother and I raised in the same house, raised with the same mom, but so very, very different. And like you said, the takes on what happened in the past, so very, very different. So I think that I just wanted to point out for the listeners that if you have a sibling and maybe you disagree on how things went down in the past, they could have went down exactly the way that each of you remember because you each lived a different life. Even though you're in the same house, you had a different life, you had different coping strategies, you had different friendships, which all make things a little bit different.
Yeah, I feel fortunate. I mean, I feel there was no accident that I was in the middle of the five children and in that home. I knew growing up something was terribly wrong. I imagined getting out. I was 10 watching Barbara Walters on my beanbag chair in my basement on my belly and just wanted to go to New York City and be like her. Um, and I did leave the morning after my high school graduation, and I didn't go back very often. And I did eventually make it to New York City.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, I was working at a large talent agency, a global talent agency. I'd done an arts management internship out of college, which was highly unusual. I think it was my junior year, an alumni came through and she told us what she did in New York. And I wrote to her from my Jersey
Oh,
Shore job that summer. And she said, I said, I'd like to come next summer and intern for you. And she said, we'd like you to come this winter. We have our first Broadway season and we need you. So I was 19 living in Greenwich Village on
wow.
my own, which was an incredible experience. And then went to New York after I graduated, got a job at a, let's see, global agency, talent agency, and it needed money on the side. So I became an exercise trainer on the side, and Barbara Walters became my client.
Did you
Yeah.
ever tell her that you were watching her and like wanted to go to New York because of her?
Yeah, no, because I couldn't geek out. I never, I've had a really privileged career and I've worked with a lot of, household name talent, but I've always treated them as the human beings they are with the pain and the vulnerabilities. They just have to expose it in public, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't include her there, but one morning I rang her doorbell at 7 a.m. and she said, Susan, get in here. What's going on? Like she was highly intuitive. That's one of the reasons she was such a good interviewer. And she got it out of me that I had been sexually harassed in the workplace the day before. And she said, I'm coming with you this morning and we're going to confront this gentleman together.
Oh.
And I said, yeah, that's okay, Barbara. I'm going to handle it. And I did. I confronted my boss that day and he said, do you have everything you need? And I said, yes. And he said, great, you're fired. So with two and a half
Awesome.
months, yeah, 2.5 months of funds in the bank, I decided to open my own talent brokerage firm. And my first deal was to knock on the door of the factory and convince Andy Warhol to do a commercial for Pontiac that he did not want to do.
Wow. So you definitely have had an interesting career.
Very, very much so. Yes. From that skill set of attaching celebrities to brands, I was able to transfer it to television and become a television producer. Um, and I think my skills that I learned growing up in my family home also really helped, just being telepathic. I mean, I could read thoughts of adults, until it became unsafe because it would come flying out of my mouth, what I was listening to and what I thought about it, and that got me into a lot of trouble. So I hid that, but it was a skill in my career. Certainly matching celebrities with brands, and certainly convincing celebrities to do TV shows they didn't want to do either. Um, but it was something that I compartmentalized.
hmm Okay, so let's go back a little bit to so you're 19, you finally got to New York where you wanted to be. Um, how was it being out of the environment that you had grown up in?
So going back even earlier, as it came time to leave, I was terrified and I didn't know if I could leave. And my first semester in college, I was so homesick, Randy. I was like, why am I this homesick to get out of this family dynamic I desired to leave for a long time? It just didn't make sense. But it's just what was, and I worked through it. I was trained to be very independent. The message was drilled into me that no one was going to take care of me. My father said, your tastes are too expensive, and no one's going to want you. And that ended up echoing into me carrying the weight in most of my personal relationships, and a lack of value and worth and self-esteem played itself out. So from New York, I was invited to Los Angeles for what I thought was an amazing career move, and
Okay.
it was. But ultimately, it was to meet my greatest guru, who was the man who would become my ex-husband.
Okay. So, all right. Well, you brought it up, so I'm gonna keep going down that hole unless you want to stop. So you're on the other side of the country.
Yeah, away from everything, most everything I know. I had one aunt and uncle that lived out on that side of the country, and a couple of cousins. But yeah, I was really away from it all. And I was dependent on male attention since second grade and Billy Fritz, on the playgrounds. And it was a really costly dependency. I would pick from the lowest hanging fruit. And even though my friends and associates would say, you're so strong, you're so independent, you're so accomplished, I felt afraid inside. And my central nervous system was on overdrive.
Yeah,
And my need for perfectionism was heightened.
ugh, that way of people, I think they're trying to give you kudos, but that way of doing it is one of my biggest pet peeves. I used to have people say that when I worked in the one office, and my youngest was going through all of the meltdowns and all the things before he got diagnosed with autism. And I used to have people go, "Oh, you're so strong. I don't know how you do it. Wow, you're just so amazing." And I'm like, yeah, just like you, I am freaking out inside. I have no idea what I'm doing. I am just doing it. I'm waking up every day hoping that I make it through the day. I don't actually know what I'm doing. I am scared beyond belief for my kid, for my family. And so that kind of, I guess, kudos from those people is, yeah, it bothers me so much because I never really knew how to respond to that because inside I'm freaking out and it's like, oh, thanks. Yeah. When, so I started actually going, well, I don't know what else to do.
Mm.
That was my way of saying, okay, what you're saying is kind of upsetting to me. But I also understand that you're trying to be nice. So I just started saying, yeah, I don't know any other way of being.
Yeah, ultimately, it was the perfect storm that allowed me to detonate that way of living. Um, I was becoming more tired in the relationship. I was carrying more and more of the weight. I had bought a home for our family. I was maintaining it, doing all the improvements, taking care of our son, earning the bulk of the income, and just exhausted and yet so terrified that, he would leave me. And ultimately, I saw his mask fall. So there was a false persona in there. He had grown up in a very abusive family system, and watched a lot of movies to create a false persona. He seemed like he was right out of a movie. And then I saw it all in reality, and I tried to make him accountable. So we got to the last point of a mediation, and I thought, I'm going to save this marriage, even though I knew in my heart, like it was way beyond the expiration date.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when he folded his arms and said, I'm hiring an attorney and I'm filing a divorce.
Oh, wow.
And that's when that intuitive voice was so calm and so clear. And it said, this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. And it
That's
was one
powerful.
year. Yeah, very powerful. And I held on to that, Randy, because I needed to take all the strength I had garnered as a longtime meditator, as an endurance athlete, the tools I learned growing up in my home, the tools I picked up recovering from alcoholism and addiction, the tools I learned in fighting clinical depression. It all came together in that one calendar year. And this was the metaphor for the relationship. He took up residence in the master while I took a mattress and placed it on the floor in a partial conversion in the garage
Oh,
in a
wow.
home that I had purchased for our family. And it was a year of holding no contact. So, not speaking with him verbally and not making eye contact with him. Everything was in writing. And that's what it takes to divorce a narcissist and to extricate yourself from that circumstance. And it was excruciating. But within one calendar year, I was able to write him a 6-figure check, and he could go on to his next source of supply. And ultimately, it brought me an understanding of my power and a respect for who I am as a human being, and compassion and genuine love internally. And I also had an appreciation for who he is and the role that he played. And I had compassion for how he chooses to live.
I
And it
love the
was
way you
it.
say that. You're not hating on the whole thing, which you could. You totally have every right to do that, but holding on to hatred isn't gonna help you, right? Like it's the same thing with when you hold on to um like not wanting to forgive somebody, you're just holding on to that. All you're doing is hurting yourself. So the way that you're saying that feels to me like such a release. And I hope that's how you felt. It was just like I can like feel it from you through the screen. It's just like it's gone. Like I'm moving on. It's good.
Yeah, it was the ultimate release. There'd been many releases, and certainly with my family, I had done a lot of work. I went through a long period where I didn't communicate much with them. With my brother, with my mother, it was almost 3 years at one point to come full circle. And I love them. When Toxic Family is not my title for my book, that was my publisher's title. And I felt like I'm throwing my family under the bus.
So what
My
did you want to
title,
call it?
Magical Illumination, transforming childhood trauma into adult freedom, because that's how I see it now. But my publisher's like, the people that need this book are going to be attracted to Toxic Family. And
Yeah.
that's what the story is. So,
Yeah, I think as much as your title is very heartfelt, I do have to agree a little bit more with your publisher, only because, yeah, thinking of the audience that is going to go to your book, that's the title they need to hear, because especially if they're still living in that environment, they don't need something that's like, oh, everything is, rainbows and puppy dogs. That's, right? They want, this is awful. This is what I need to read right now.
yeah,
So,
I'm grateful for the title now. And I've had to do a lot of work around the title to come full circle.
yeah.
And yes, it is having profound effects. So I'm so grateful.
And I am looking forward to reading it. So, guys, be sure to always follow my blog where I do all sorts of book reviews, because I will be, when it gets time, I will be reviewing Susan's book. And I find it so much more interesting, especially when it's a memoir, when I meet the person first and then I read the memoir and I'm like, oh, I see, yeah, look at that. It's just the connections you can make are so different than when you read the book and then meet the person.
And the thing that actually surprises me is, sort of as a throwaway, I put exercises in the appendix. So it's like a workbook that helped me when I was moving through
I do
the
that in my
issues.
books.
Oh, good. I copied you then, not knowing. I was like intuiting. Yeah. But that's what's really having impact. The story is riveting, but to make it the reader's own, the workbook is really having impact.
I love that. Okay, so before we delve a little bit more into the book, which we're about to do, I always like to ask kind of a final question. So, for people who are listening right now and they're in the midst of their toxic relationship or toxic family, what kind of wisdom do you have to share with them?
Well, first, just it's going to take a minute to become aware of your circumstance, and then accepting it is huge, and taking action is the last step. So one thing that really helped me and helps me to this day, it's not like, I live in Candyland now. I live on the earth, and there's all sorts of personalities walking their path here, but what helps me is tranquility and calm. So let's just do it now. Take in a really deep breath, just taking a breath, and just be aware of your breath. And take your hand, either one, doesn't matter. Put it on your solar plexus. That's at the top of your rib cage, and it's below your heart. And that's where I hold a lot of the trauma. That's where a lot of my central nervous system anxiety goes. So just breathe again, be aware of your breathing, and either say quietly to yourself or out loud, I am okay. I am okay. I am okay. And just that simple, tangible exercise really helps me ground and feel that sense of compassion. This is a hard walk. Earth is not for the faint of heart. I see it as a huge classroom, and a lot of it is at the PhD level when I feel like I'm barely out of grammar school. But we can do the walk together. There's a lot of help here, and that exercise just helps put it all into perspective. So that's what I'd have to say.
That is amazing. I really like that one. I did something very similar. earlier this year with my therapist. So it definitely works,
Oh,
guys. It does. It does. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about your book. So we know that it's a memoir. We know that you got some a little bit workbook at the back. Is there anything else that we need to know about this book?
well, I'm just grateful to have had the privilege of the experience. I mean, I went at it like a bulldog producer to get the first draft, which I don't recommend, but I spent 15 minutes at my computer daily, whether I had something to write or not. Um, and it did give me a first draft, but I didn't feel connected to the manuscript. So a very wise mentor said to me, you know what? Why don't you go back and take a pass from little Susie's point of view, that little one inside your heart that walked through all of this. And Randy, though the manuscript didn't change that much, my connection to it did. And I think it was in galley form. And I was doing the final read through, and I think it was chapter 12 where I talk about the divorce. And I finished that chapter and I went, oh my God, that woman is strong. And I realized, like, that's you.
That's awesome.
It was like a split second, but and and it was an amazing exercise to really authentically see how my life has played out so magically, and to show me the rich brocade that each thread has become. And it's mixed with joy and pain and triumph and despair. And it's all something that now I'm proud of, and I'm so blessed to be leaving a legacy, because I would have missed something without it.
Yeah, I love that. And tell us the name of it again.
Sure, the name is Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom.
And where do we get it?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, it's in bookstores all around the world. And you can also go to my website, susangold.us.
Awesome. And those links are going to be down in the description below, of course. And where do we follow you?
I hate social media.
Oh, Susan, we want to follow you.
Yeah, it's all on susangold.us. You can go there and you
Okay.
can find everything. But that's enough promotion, because oh my gosh, Randy, if I get another email from my new best friend who's gonna sell me their $5,000 course for $1.99,
Oh
I
my
think I'm
goodness.
gonna
Okay. I
scream.
agree with that. That it's like a little ridiculous. We don't need the spam. We're trying to, we're putting our whole lives out there when we're writing memoirs, when we're talking about it on shows, that we want to help people. We only want the messages from the people that actually, have real questions, not the junk.
Well, I understand if you have a junky question and you want to reach out. Like, I have tremendous compassion, and I understand it. And I think it's brave that anyone does reach out. But I feel like that needs to come from one's heart,
Oh
and
yeah.
they'll be gently guided. And the people that have bought the book have known, yeah, it's for me. There's so many strangers that have made purchases that I'm just like, okay, I guess this is coming from the heavens. So
Yeah. Well, like I said, when you put it out there, you're putting it out there to help people. So that's good news. All right. So thank you so much, Susan, for coming on the show, for sharing with us. Everybody go pick up the book. You can get it pretty much anywhere. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And we can always have Susan come back on the show and talk some more.
thank you so much for this opportunity. It was really beautiful.
Bye. As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye!